All
We're
right,
live.
we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to our live. Today our subject is how to get started on your crowdfunding campaign. And anytime if you have any questions or comments, just pop them into the comments section. And we're going to be chatting for 20 or 30 minutes today. I'm Charlotte Squire. And I am Projects Marketing Lead for Pledge Me, and I work remotely in beautiful Takaka Golden Bay. And we also have here Anna Gunther, Pledge Me's co-founder.
We have me here, but we also have my cat Frida here, who's just decided this
Frida.
is the perfect time to jump on my lap. Calling in from up the Kapiti Coast to talk about crowdfunding. I'll be talking. Frida won't be. She'll just be.
I always want to know if Frida's got the eyebrows when I hear about.
She's actually named after a different Frida. She's named after Frida Defar, who was a climber in New Zealand.
That's
Because
right.
she is a climber. But Frida Kahlo is also amazing. There's a few good Fridas in this world.
There are some awesome Fridas.
Yeah.
So let's get started then, Anna and Frida. We are going to talk about getting your campaign started. And I wanted to talk about this because often I am seeing at a projects level, people launching campaigns, crowdfunding project campaigns, which is where you're exchanging pledges for rewards, and they'll kick it off. They might get a few pledges, but then that's it. They won't. Sometimes that's all that can happen on a project campaign, and there is so much potential for more to happen, and for people to reach their minimum targets if they're prepared to reach out to their crowd. Have you ever noticed this, Anna?
Yeah, I think there's this thing with crowdfunding where sometimes people don't always realize that it's going out to your crowd first. So you have to have your crowd ready. And when you get started, that crowd is the crowd that's going to really validate you and get the ball rolling. So it's really figuring out how, when you get started, do you get your crowd really, really engaged?
And I think that you are such a pro at that, Anna, which I'm going to be asking you about soon. So, so the first subject I wanted to talk about was the fact that you actually can prepare your crowd that before you launch. So you can let them know that you are going to be crowdfunding, and you can let your crowd know that you would love any feedback on what you're going to do. You could ask for feedback on your rewards or on the way you're pitching your crowdfund. Over to you, Anna.
Yeah, there's this old adage that goes, if you ask for money, you get advice. And if you ask for advice, you get money. And I think with crowdfunding, you can get both. Like if you ask for advice, you can get feedback and money. And so what we totally recommend is before you go live, like preparing that crowd, like talking to them about the fact that you're thinking about doing this thing, asking them for their feedback, like what kind of rewards would they want if you're doing a project campaign? Or, if you're doing an equity campaign, what kind of benefits would they want as a shareholder, as well as getting shares in the company? So you can start asking them questions before you go live, so they know it's coming, but they're also feeding into the final plan and they feel like they're part of it more than just, here's this fully fledged campaign that I've just launched and I never told you about, and now it's out in the world. So really thinking about that, how do you engage people, get them giving you feedback, get them thinking about what's coming before it's live.
It's so cool to warm your crowd up, isn't it? And at a project crowdfund level, sometimes your crowd, your community actually don't even know what crowdfunding is. So part of it can be even explaining what that means and how to crowdfund. And by doing this, I mean, it's really, really important. I think I'm seeing to do that at an equity crowdfund level, because when they do go live, it's a very cool thing when we can get some pledges coming in straight away. So good for campaigners' confidence. But it's a great feeling, I think, for people or campaigners when they do go live to actually get some pledges coming in straight away. It can build your confidence from the beginning. And even, I'm even asking people or suggesting to people that if they've got, even on a project crowdfund level, to be directly, speaking one-on-one to people, right? And actually saying, what do you think? Would you be prepared to pledge straight away?
Totally. And this is what we call the first 50, right? Like you should
Right.
have a list of the 50 people that you think might pledge or share your campaign. Write them down, like their names, like who are these actual people in your crowd that you think will be part of it? And then start talking to them before you even go live. Say that this thing is coming, you're looking to raise money to do XYZ and get their feedback and advice and keep them in the loop as you prepare. And you can also do like posts on your own social media before you go live, letting people know it's coming. We did that for our first equity campaign. We posted a picture of a dog eating dog food and talked about how we were going to eat our own dog food and equity crowdfunding, just to let people know it was coming
Mm.
and ask if they'd be interested. And so you can start getting that sort of feedback and see who's keen before you launch the campaign. So when you get started, there's that sort of momentum and feedback straight away, which is what you
Mm.
want.
And one of the cool things about getting that feedback immediately is you will actually literally get feedback on whether your campaign is coming across clearly.
Mm,
People understand why you're crowdfunding and they want to
mm,
engage. Um, because one of the things I do with former journalist here, I always want to make sure the comms are super clear for people. They can
mm,
understand as soon as they go onto your page why you're crowdfunding, what you're crowdfunding for, right?
and what people get in return.
Right, with the
Yeah,
rewards.
yeah,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
shares. Yeah, so being clear,
Or share.
what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what people get in return. That's the being super clear on those three messages.
Mm. Nice. Very, very important. So, the next thing I wanted to talk about was planning to keep your crowd engaged. So, ideally, the average is maybe a 30-day campaign, although sort of getting a little bit longer lately. Ideally, you'll be connecting with your crowd on some level, maybe social media, which we can easily ping out to people daily, or it may be maybe offline that you're communicating with people. But ideally, you've got a bit of a plan there before you even begin, and a plan can support you, right? So on those days when you're not, maybe you're tired or you don't feel creative about how you're going to reach out, you've done the planning and the thinking a little bit beforehand about who these people are via your first 50 list and how you're going to reach out to them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a mix of reactive comms, which is like, we've just hit this goal or we're doing this thing. And then there's the proactive comms, like knowing once a week you're going to do an update out and tell people what's happened in your campaign and in your world.
Nice.
Maybe organizing an event in real life and inviting people to that. So there's some stuff is coming, as well as some stuff that just comes up as you go. But yeah, keeping people engaged and keeping them engaged in an exciting way, like um, being really positive and here's what's happening, and less about like just the constant, hey, pledge now, more of
Mm.
here's an update on what's happening. By the way, here's a link to my page. You can get sweet, sweet rewards if you go there. And there's different ways to keep people engaged, right? Like you can also do things like announce new rewards or announce different things that might get people excited about your campaign, while still reminding them that it's still live and to jump on it and check it out.
That is, yeah, such great points there. Really important to me that people know it's an active campaign. It's not just to put your campaign up there and hope something happens, but through being active, you are going to activate your crowd through doing all these
Mm.
things that Anna's talking about. And Anna, we've got a question.
Oh, I love questions.
We have a question. I'm not sure if I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. Coming from LinkedIn, Gayle, Gaelle is
Gail.
asking,
Hi, Gail.
when do you recommend is the best timing in your journey to run a campaign?
Where you are right now, Gail. No, I think the best timing, there's two times that are really great in running a campaign. One is when you're just getting started and you need this amount of money to start your project, to start your company, and you activate your crowd around it. So we need, for example, in my experience, $18,000 to launch a cheese company. You could go out to your crowd then and get them to really help you make it happen and get started. The next time where it's really good to go, though, is when you're growing. So we need this to grow our company or grow our project or make that next thing happen, and being really clear about what it is that you need to make that next thing happen. So it can either be a campaign right when you get started, which might be more like a project campaign than an equity campaign, or it's when you're growing, which might be more of an equity campaign for companies, but can also be a project campaign for people with different setups than a company structure. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is knowing who your crowd is and figuring out how to pitch what you're doing to them in a way that they get really excited about.
Hmm. And Anna, can you give some examples for who your crowd might be when you're right at the beginning?
So when you just started and you haven't launched anything yet,
Hmm.
it really is your personal crowd to start with, right? Your family, your friends, your professional networks, people that already know you and want to support you in the new thing that you're doing, and they trust you to make that new thing happen. So at the start, your crowd is a bit closer. It is the people that you know. Once you're going, your crowd is anyone who's ever engaged with what you're doing. It's people that don't know you. It's people that hear about what's happening and can see a bit of validation has happened already because you've already started. Um, and that crowd can also come in when you're at the really early stages, but you sort of need to have activated that close crowd first to make them understand and excited and keen for what you're doing.
Nice. We have another question.
We have heaps of questions.
Here
I'm
it is. Look, I've done.
loving this.
Here's a flash thing. I've put it on the screen even. Can you see it, Anna?
Yes, I can. So, Kiara, Anna, and Charlotte, do businesses usually have more success on one social media platform over another? Charlotte, I'll let you go first and then I'll add my thoughts.
Right. So my thoughts about that are that it depends on where you feel strongest. So which platform you have the strongest following on. Where do you feel confident? Where do you feel like you have the best engagement on your social media? For me, to be honest, LinkedIn and I haven't yet fallen in love, and we don't play together often. But I love Instagram for the visuals, and I feel like I get great. This is for me with my personal accounts. I really have a lot of fun with reels, and I also feel like I get really great engagement on Facebook. So I guess it's about asking yourself those questions with your socials, and it's also worth noting that YouTube is officially a social media channel as well. If you have any success with your videos on YouTube, but yeah, Anna, over to you.
I think that's totally right. Like it's where your crowd is and where you're confident. That's where you should be really focusing your comms. That said, I did have someone infamously tell me once that they were just going to run their entire campaign through Twitter and that was going to be their sole channel. And I was like, no, Twitter is great, but if you blink, you miss it. So it's a great place to like get activity and
Mm,
get people aware. But we got him to think about having a call to action in there as well to sign up to an expression of interest. This was an equity campaign, so he built an email list at the same time as
mm,
creating some noise and activity over on Twitter. But Twitter was definitely his channel. That's where his crowd was, and they were really excited. And when they did
mm.
go live, they raised $500,000 in half an hour. So
Amazing.
it definitely worked for him, but we added the step of get a mailing list going as well. So you can email
Mm.
people information as well as having that Twitter channel really
Wow.
going.
Yeah, that reminds me of when one project campaign that was successful came out of Littleton, which I know is a really close knit community. And that guy didn't use any social media. So he must have just done it word of mouth and emails. And he used a YouTube video, but absolutely no social media at all. Hey, we have another question. Loving this from
Thanks.
Louise. I'm going to put this on the screen for us. I have a plan, I have a crowd and the campaign bones, but I don't have a long lead time. Can I hit go? What was
Totally.
that lead time? To
Yeah.
tell the truth. What do you reckon, Anna?
Um, Totally, you can hit go. I think the thing is, lead times can be good because it gives you a chance to activate your crowd, but really the only activation they need is to go to your campaign page and pledge once
Mm,
it's live. So you don't need heaps of lead time. I think we've had one of our campaigns, they only had 3 days because they needed to know within 3 days if they were going to hit go on filming down south or not. And so they said,
mm,
hey, this is what we're doing. We need $10,000 to greenlight going and filming this short film. And they raised the money they needed in 3 days, so they knew they could greenlight it, they could get on the plane, they could go and do the thing, and they offered, like, crazy rewards. It was a short film, and they offered things like the, director would jump into a freezing body of water on in the South Island, shouting out your name to camera, and I think he had to do that, like, 20 or 30 times, like, there was someone in the cafe across the road just being like, "Can you stop him?" Like, "This is not a great idea." But that was one of the rewards he offered to get their crowd activated, and they raised, I think, $10,000 to do what they needed to do. So short lead time, short campaign window, but it just really galvanized their crowd around, this is what we need to do. We need to know if we can do this thing in this amount of time.
Mm.
So lead times can be great, but it's also not required as long as you're engaging your crowd around the thing that you want to do.
That is very cool. I hope that answers your question, Louise. Wow, all these questions. This is
Love it.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, so something else I wanted to let people know about that people don't necessarily know is that often, well, definitely for me, working more with the project campaigns, they can start with a bang, and then they'll slow down. So people will come in and get excited and pledge, and then they wouldn't have yet met their minimum goal, but they'll yeah, so things will slow right down, and it's then that you need to just keep putting the word out there and know that that's normal. I mean, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes, as Anna's just said, they'll come together really quickly, and they'll, in that case, they meet their minimum target within 3 days, which means you meet your minimum target. You're going to get all your funds, but often they'll start. You'll get a good bunch of your friends and family pledging, and then things will slow down. That's normal, right, Anna?
Totally. So what we find is the start of a campaign and the end of the campaign are when it's busiest, because the start is when it's launched and people who are excited get in really quick. And at the end, that's when we see deadline magic. So often people leave things to the last minute. I definitely know I do. Even if I really love something, I won't pledge until it's the final day because I'm like, oh, I have to get in before it closes. So you have the race at the middle and the deadline magic at the end, and then the race at the start and then deadline magic at the end. But the middle is where things can get quite slow, and so that's where you just need to think about different ways to keep your crowd excited and update them and offer new rewards. Like, what are the different things that can keep that campaign going? Which is also why we recommend not having super long campaigns, because
Mm.
otherwise you're just stuck in that middle bit for longer of trying to figure out different ways of getting your campaign out there, knowing that most of the pledges will come in the first few days and the last few days.
Mm. Yeah, I see it being such a journey of keeping the faith in the middle of the campaign. One example I often give to people about just keeping on is Nickel Neru. They every Monday throughout their, I don't know how long, maybe a month, 5-week campaign, took photos of their cats because Nickel Neru are a cat adoption kind of cafe in Lower Hutt, and all they would do is take photos of their cats lounging around in the sun and just chilling out. And then they use those as images just to post every day on their socials. And this is right in the middle of their campaign when it had slowed down a lot. Pledging had really slowed down, even though they had an amazing crowd. They just kept on posting up pictures going, hey, look at our cute cat sunbathing. Oh, by the way, we're running a campaign. Check it out. So they just kept on reminding people using their cute cat photos. And, it doesn't, you can just have fun with ways you keep communicating and just keep it on people's radar that you're crowdfunding. And then, as Anna said, towards the end of the campaign, the deadline magic will kick in. But it's just about holding your nerve and just staying positive until that last deadline magic stage, which is, a lot of us will finally get off our asses and do something in the last week, which can be really stressful when you're running a campaign. But please keep that in mind, that's why, as part of the reason we do it this way, deadline magic can really make things happen. Often, some of it, well, I don't want to say too much here and promise too much, but often like 50% of it can come in the last week, right, Anna? You've probably seen this heaps.
Yeah, the graph is really startling of the sort of upward trend at the end, and I think
Right.
the craziest I saw was someone who raised 80% in the final
Yeah.
24 hours of their
Uh,
goal. But they did a great job of just keeping motivated and keeping going,
mm,
and I think they did a few live streams in the final few days to really engage people and get them asking questions. Um,
mm,
and it's also, yeah, just making sure you're ready for that psychologically, that the start will be
yeah.
busy and the end will probably be busy as long as you've communicated with your crowd. So what do you do in the middle to keep that magic going?
Yeah, and some people have a really good support crew around them to help cheer them on, right? And there are all sorts of ways to keep your mind in a really positive place, I think, to get through that. Have you got a visitor? I
I don't
can't
know what that
see.
is.
Black
It's just like
blur.
there's a bug on my
It's a bug. Oh, it's a bug.
there's a fly. I was like, there's no one behind me. That's really scary. No, the fly was on my camera. Okay. What's the next tip that you have, Charlotte? Unless
Um,
anyone has any questions. I loved that question flurry. I'll just
oh,
reiterate to
I love
people
those
watching. If
questions.
you have any more questions, we
Another
love them.
way Another thing we were going to talk about was milestones as
Mm,
great tools to be celebrating along the way. Great reasons to be communicating with your crowd is to say things like, you might launch, obviously, your first milestone is launching, and then your second milestone might be 5% raised, or it might be we've been going for 1 week, just any excuse to be celebrating your progress.
mm. Totally halfway there. Or even like someone sometimes shouting out people pledging that if someone writes a really lovely comment on your pledge and you want to share that, you can do that as well. Or getting people to share in their own words why they're pledging to your campaign can get other people thinking about it too. So celebrate as you go and celebrate the different things and that's happening during the campaign. And it could be, really reactive stuff like we've gotten some media coverage or, um, yeah, we're having a live, whatever it is. And then if you do hit your goal in that time, celebrate what you're going to do next. So set some stretch goals of
Good point.
um, we've hit our goal for this part of the campaign, but actually if we get to $2,000, we'll do this, or if we get to 500,000, we'll do that. So like just thinking
Mm,
about what that next goal is so people keep
mm.
excited and keep sharing and can talk to it.
Stretch goals. Yeah, that's a really great thing, I think, and just in case people don't know about those, if you're thinking about running a crowdfunding campaign with us, project or equity, yeah, stretch goals is a term that we use when people have passed their minimum target. Maybe, is it more a project campaign thing, or maybe we use them at equity level as well?
You can do it in equity as well. Equity, we have
Yeah.
a minimum and a maximum. So
Yeah.
people set a maximum goal, but you can also say what you're going to do in between as well. Like,
Mm.
we've raised the first 500,000, but if we get to 750, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, totally. And so same at project level, we've passed our minimum target, which means we can do what the most important thing we were aiming to do. But who did it? Solid, the toothpaste company, just did it. They wanted to buy a piece of machinery. They wanted to buy something. So that became their stretch goal. And they started talking about, what a great help it would be to buy this piece of gear
Mm,
if they I don't know, stretched another $2,000. So if you've got a really engaged crowd and you've created some great momentum, it's a really cool thing to know, that you can bring in these stretch goals. So just if anyone's just come on board, we are this Anna and Charlotte, and we are going to go for another 5 minutes ish, and we're talking about how to get started on your crowdfunding campaign. And the final thing, and I wanted to say, please reach out with any more questions you have because we love questions. But the final thing I wanted to talk about was continuing to share, ask your crowd to pledge and share is what I'm trying to say here. So asking your crowd, if they haven't pledged already, please pledge. And if they've already pledged, could they share it with their crowd? And I really love it. Can ripple out when the deadline magic kicks in. Often your campaign will ripple out through all these crowds of crowds that, via all these people you don't know. Just the sheer excitement of people being invested, emotionally invested in helping you reach that minimum target can really push your campaign out to way more people.
mm. Yeah, and I think with that, like just when you're trying to get people excited about pledging, is making sure you're really clear on what's in it for them. So sharing the rewards, sharing, why you want your crowd involved, like what it means to have them be a part of your campaign.
Mm,
Just make it really positive and about them, and always remember to put the link in posts. But sometimes it's more about them and more about what they can get and celebrating them and their support of you.
that's such
We
a
have
great
another
way.
question.
We have another question.
I know. Yeah,
Oh, we
I'm
do too. Hold on.
excited.
I'll share it on the screen. Hold on.
And while you share it, I'll read it. So,
Cool.
a question around videos for the promo, rewards, etc. They cost money. Do you have any recommendations on how much you should spend versus what you're raising? Um, I'll quickly go first and say videos are great. Like it shows that you are really invested in the campaign and you're putting yourself out there to your crowd by showing them who you are in a video. But you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. It could just be that you do something to camera to your phone. or you could go out and get someone to professionally do it for you. I always recommend, if you're going to get someone professionally to do it for you, find a friend, pay them for it, but like find a friend who already knows you, because they can also help pull out some of the special things about you that you might not think about when you're just writing a brief for an agency. So if you can, find a friend. You can also do it yourself. And then, I wouldn't spend heaps of money on it unless you're going for an equity campaign. And then you might want to put a bit of budget behind it. But if it's for, if you're raising 20K, I wouldn't recommend putting more than a few $100 towards it if you're paying, or tops 1,000. Really try to do what you can with what you've got and through friends. Um, I broke the cardinal rule of running a crowdfunding campaign when we did the cheese cartel one, and that we didn't actually spend any money on a video. We didn't make a video. All we did was we spent a few $100 getting some really beautiful photography done for us from I think they were a high school student at the time, a friend's kid.
Oh,
But she gave me her rate, and I was like, oh, no, no, we're paying you triple that. That is
yes.
too little money. Like, you are getting a few $100 for this to do some beautiful, beautiful imagery.
Mm.
But what would you say, Charlotte?
Well, I generally work more with projects, and to them, I say it doesn't need to be flash. I would suggest you do it yourself. It's you can do a selfie. You can ask a friend to hold it for you. Just on your
Mm,
iPhone or your phone, and have fun with it and be yourself. I always say that a video, just as a general thing, I love it when people do videos, and I'm saddened when they don't, because they are such a great way to build trust, and for people to see who you are,
mm,
and get to know you a little bit, because a lot of crowdfunding is about trust. If there's no connection between you and the people you're reaching out to, they're less likely to pledge. So that's what a video can do. And I remember the early years of crowdfunding, seeing some people going out, probably saw you actually, Anna, and they were such lovely, simple, earnest videos, and they were touching in that they were real and authentic. People weren't trying to pretend to be anything they weren't. They weren't hiding behind branding, or they weren't coming across as all spammy and markety. They were just
mm,
passionate about what they were doing, and I think that still works for a video, and you
mm.
can do that totally for free these days. I mean, I used to work for Fairfax for stuff, and we were using the iPhones. They're really good quality, and so are Samsungs and all those phones these days. You can make great videos with those, and they've also got the editing software on them.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah.
if you're doing a video, I think, and you really want to make it great, take the time to draft a script and think about what are your key messages that you want to say, and what are the sort of shots that you want to get. So what's the to camera stuff versus maybe a bit of B-roll where it's a voiceover, and being really clear on that. We made a video for our first equity campaign for Pledge Me, and originally had a very complicated script, which was walking and talking to camera, and it wasn't great when it was finally edited together, and ended up just really going back to basics and simplifying and getting the script that really just hit the key messages, a bit to camera, a bit of showing our product, a bit of showing
Mm,
our team. And we had people tell us that they pledged based on that. And it was definitely a bit more authentic and earnest than the original complicated script. Um, but yeah, I think video is great, to your point, for building trust, Charlotte. And I think it's just thinking about what your crowd will want to see. Um,
mm,
so yeah, you don't have to spend heaps of money to make it happen. You can do it yourself or do it with friends.
mm. Great. Yeah, that was a really cool question. I think video is something, it does make such a difference. And if you want to make like a really good quality video, and you are going to, if you do have the budget for it, awesome, awesome. But I think where I was coming from was just to reassure you that if you don't have a really massive budget for a video, that's totally fine. What do you think,
Mm.
Frida? Do you have anything to add?
Frida has opinions.
He has
she's just
opinions.
she's opinions, but mainly she's just a cat on the internet.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
shall we? Oh, we've got more people watching now. I think that was the pull of Frida being up
I
on
think it
screen.
was.
Shall
Yeah.
we wrap up? I'm going to hand it over to you, Charlotte, for the final
Okay.
wrap on how to get a campaign started.
Yay. Thanks everyone for dropping in. If anyone has any other questions, now is your time. But you can, of course, always reach us via any of our socials or in the comments of this video. I'm going to be sharing this all over the place. I think this is a really important subject we've talked about today, which is just how to get started. Because, as I said in the beginning, so many people get started and then they just sort of fade away. So if you've just come in, take the time to watch back through this. A large part of it is reassurance that it's normal for some campaigns to start strong and then slow down a bit mid campaign. So do have a look through it. I think you'll hopefully be inspired by some of this info. Super important. It's basic information that probably you've been telling people for the last decade, Anna. But I work at a project level. I see so many people coming through who need to know this stuff just when they're just starting out. So, yeah, we're going to wrap it up now, and I'm going to share this across socials. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us. Thank you for your questions. They were so cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
I'm just going to quickly summarize what we've discussed, which is prepare your campaign with your crowd, share it as much as you can before it goes live, when it goes live, throughout the campaign, and just keep sharing as the third point. But share in ways that keep people excited rather than being spammy. Thanks,
Keep
everyone.
sharing. Keep sharing. Thea, thanks, people. See you again soon. We're going to do this again very soon. Bye.
Bye.